They all look so determined, don't they?
Yeah. Well, as I said, those
They look
it's a
like,
gift from the mayor of Buffalo to the people of Buffalo. All these ducks that they have for the lake. Sorry, I don't have any bread, kids.
oh, look at that one at the back.
Yeah.
It's a bit desperate, isn't it? Oh, they're sweet. They look so determined.
So anyway, Eric.
Now, what are we going to talk about
But
now?
no, the
Something more
point is that
interesting.
I want you to be able to defend yourself as being an example of what I'm talking about, and yet resisting
Have you put
the
it on?
conceptual issue.
Is it
Yeah,
on?
it's on now.
Oh, wow, I got all my horrible laughter on that.
Yeah, you bet.
Oh, boy. I don't feel like defending myself at all, actually. I mean,
Okay.
because it's quite simply that I don't feel, I want to go around justifying and defending. I mean, I'm concerned. I thought, it's all very well for you to go on like you've been going, but from day to day, year in, year out, being all over the darn world, one is concerned very, very closely with doing what one can in terms of expounding culture. I don't feel myself to be a literary critic or an academic or this or that. I just got just a desperate man, basically, because I've had just about enough of the 20th century. It lasted me a long time.
I,
The leaders, the masses, every darn thing about it sickens me entirely. So I have to work out very carefully, like other people in my condition, I have no unique strategies.
well, it is the.
Strategies of behavior,
Mhm.
of economy. You know what Thoreau called economy? That is the sense of what do you do with that amount of time, that amount of energy, that amount of ability from time to time. So, one runs classes, one does all sorts of classes. I mean, teaching, what I've been doing. I mean, different jobs, different things to do, run poetry readings, try and publish things, edit things, and that's it. And I find it a very, very tiny, modest, a little bit of work, given the fact that the vast majority of people, and I insist on this, all over the world, are manipulated and trained and seduced, to use your word, into not caring a tuppenny toot about the things that you and I value.
Yeah.
Now, in order to change that structure, I think there's something else far bigger needed than poetry. I wish I thought that poetry had any way of influencing that talk. I don't. Then one
Well,
minute.
I just last week I was at a symposium of photographers,
Yeah,
and it was about social documentary photography, actually.
yeah,
Nathan Lyons was there, and they had a sociologist
uh-huh,
that was there, and Milton Rogovin was there, a
yeah,
local Buffalo
yeah,
uh, documentary photographer, and they were very good. And so they presented the issues of social documentation, and then the issues of poetry and craft and form. And Milton was almost pleading for the consideration of social documentary photography as an art form, as if he had to plea anymore.
that's terrible.
As an older man, now Milton's, I think, in his 70s, still having gotten a lot of recognition, still have not gotten a kind of respectability that he feels
Yeah.
for the work. So he's pleading to the students to pay attention to the craft and to pay attention to the social and political issues. The sociologist, of course, was talking about the evolution of the art form, the social documentary form, and mentioning various authors and their works and the importance of paying attention to the details of the image in certain ways, and even manipulation of the images in certain ways where they had been posed instead of spontaneous
Right,
photographs. And yet he saw no value, no disvalue in that posing simply to make an issue. And one of the students got up and asked the question about the difference between the form and the content, the difference between the true and the real, the difference between a photographer as a political animal and the photographer as an artist. And it came down to a very kind of weird question. And that was whether or not the social documentary photography in the 30s in America affected any significant change. And how can you answer that?
Right.
Or whether or not it was responsible for making change. In the same way, was beat poetry in the 1950s responsible for social change? Well, the answer, of course, as our good friend Mr. Burroughs would say, yes and no. I mean, it's not a question. It's not an either-or situation. Of course it contributes to the effecting of change, but there is no single issue. And this is the point for me, and this is what I call the responsibility of the poet, is since we know that very few individuals make that large a change in the world, that it is in fact a collective issue.
Yeah.
And it's a collective issue not only of individuals, but of different kinds of activities. You can only do what you can go about getting done. But certainly if you abdicate your responsibility, you get nothing done. You make no contribution to this collective influence that takes place. So the answer to, does poetry, does social documentary photography help to affect change, or does it make change? Well, it's a bit and piece of it, and so's everyone that's involved in it who is working toward it. Now, I suppose I still belong to that 60s confrontation generation, in which if you're not a part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Therefore, poets that go around writing this narcissistic, masturbatory, confessional poetry, I think are part of the problem. I think they delete funds from people who are doing serious work, and they sidetrack the issues, and they bury a lot of work in this morass of mediocrity.
But we have to add that for a lot of people in the country, as you well know, certainly in Britain, poetry is self-expression, and these poets, therefore, are respected. And the reason why the governing bodies who govern public money give money to those things and train people to think of those official poetry, they know that certainly in Britain, in the schools, poetry is still considered to be sort of autobiographical self-expression. And until that is eradicated, of course the money will go into that area. And of course money won't go to James Joyce or Gertrude Stein, all the really great writers, because they don't confess any damn thing. They just explore the language, as the language poets are doing in San Francisco, I may say. They are not masturbatory in any sense. No way. There is a very strong political gesture going on there to do with the opposition to that wasteland of consumerist poetry which says, you will eat this literature, you will eat this film, you will eat this music just as you eat some junk food.
Well, you know, the general poets that I'm talking about, most of them are poets scattered around the country that are concerned with the provincial. We were talking about this the other day.
Oh, well, that's
all those provincial attitudes of what poetry is and the confessional. And we're not talking about the kind of confessional
and
poetry
we defined,
that Ginsberg or Paul
we
Carroll.
defined the. I don't think Ginsberg ever confessed anything, but unfortunately, in many ways. But certainly, what we're talking about, I think, is the sense that if that's all you do, is dumping horrible bits of life on people. I mean, particularly, usually they haven't had any life they can dump on anything, any self-respect at all. But the difference between Creedy, Olson, people like Kerouac, as a poet, I mean, and Ginsberg and people we respect from the 60s and 70s, it's very clear business to do with the difference between them and someone like Anne Sexton or the worst of Robert Lowell or Sylvia Plath or all these other people. That is, the people we respect are deeply concerned with experimenting with forms, with inventive, imaginative invention. They're not dumping anything on anybody. They're offering a poem as a new structure, as a gift. That is, they sidestep completely, and that's a political act, the whole consumer structure of music, film, junk food, the whole damn thing, which says, you better eat this is official, this is your culture. If you don't partake in it, you're not partaking in the culture. The rest is an exception to all that rule. And that's what we have, it seems to me, that's exactly what we have to foster. The opposition is a very clear one. What the rest is also very clear to me, and I do not find it helpful at all, as some people do apparently, to refer to that as elitist or whatever word one was to use. My feeling is that as a desperate man at the end of the 20th century, which has been an appalling thing, it is very important that we say right, using your phrase. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. I certainly do not see the solution in any way except sticking it out as an artist in terms of imaginative invention offered as a gift to people. I can't see any other way of doing this. And certainly, I think the political issue for literature starts there. It's a very strange business, this, because the politics of art is because my feeling is that once literature becomes propaganda at all, let's talk about that a bit.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Can we just talk about let's talk
Yeah.
about confessional poetry as propaganda for the self,
Yeah,
like hymns to the darn ego.
yeah.
Who cares? Right, now the other side of that is it not? Is the worst of that is what we know about the Plathism and whatnot. But the other side of it is even more awful, and that is like propaganda for any kind of position, ideological position, which is not under a constant state of review and examination. But that will do its definition, I think, isn't it?